Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Eric Nieves, Client Account Manager with Center Technologies. With specialized expertise in Microsoft Dynamics, we are an IT service provider that delivers technology solutions to meet each business's unique challenges, working as an extension of their teams to monitor, maintain, and improve their IT systems. Today, we're going to have a couple of presenters speaking. Steve Anderson, who is our solutions architect here with Center Technologies, along with Whit Lester, VP of Sales over at Primo Payday. And here with Center Technologies, we deliver modern IT services for small businesses, mostly focused in 5 main categories, starting from left to right. Managed services, cloud solutions, cybersecurity protection, IT consulting and delivery, as well as business intelligence. Today, we're actually going to be focusing on business intelligence. Business intelligence for Center Technologies typically revolves around Dynamics 365 Business Central. And what I will do now, I'll turn it over to our solutions architect, Steve Anderson, who's with our business intelligence team here with Center. And Steve, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Eric. So hi, this is Steve Anderson. I just want to spend a minute just talking about where Business Central fits into the world of Microsoft, and also how Primo Payday, the payroll solution, will work with that. So for those of you not familiar, Dynamics 365 Business Central is Microsoft's flagship ERP solution. Works in the full Microsoft stack. You can see in this graphic that it sits in the middle with everything else that Microsoft can do. There's automation, there's workflow, there's reporting, all the things that you would expect from an enterprise level ERP solution. We have that with Business Central. And there are some areas, though, that Business Central doesn't do, which in payroll is one of those. And so we partner up, and we love working with Primo. So this is a great solution. So that's what we want to focus and spend our time on today. So I'm going to turn it over to Whit Lester, who's the VP of Sales for Primo, and let him take us through the product.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Entire screen. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'll get my screen shared here. Primo Payday. Okay. Can we see the RH master test with AL here in the left corner? We all looking at the same thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, everyone. Hi, Whit Lester, Primo Payday, which is an embedded payroll application for Business Central, meaning it does work like an out-of-the-box payroll module for the system. So, several key components of this product are one, to be able to tie directly to your GL, so you can post accounting entries in real time to your ledger, which we'll look at in this walkthrough. But also, due to the embedded nature of the application, obviously you have the ability to track employees and pay them and generate checks and run reports and things, but it also offers the ability to push data from payroll to other areas in Business Central, such as projects, or if you want to incorporate employee costs to specific items, if you want labor costing or things like that. Also allows you to pull information and data sets into payroll if that's relevant. For example, if you want to post time to a project and then pull it in for payroll. So it gives you a lot more seamless access, with payroll being able to work within the rest of your ERP system. And then also just being highly configurable. So one thing that's been a core tenet of the architecture of this product is to make it as configurable as we can to mitigate the need to customize. This is an ERP module, so clearly customizations do have to happen from time to time, but we've got features like payroll process procedures, where you can customize, in essence, calculations and link them to payroll codes. without actually having to develop code to do it. So if you run into situations where you have really unique garnishment calculations, or if you have really unique benefit deductions, an example would be like you have employees that contribute to both a Roth IRA and a 401k, and there's an employer contribution limit that coincides across both of those deductions, and you're worried you're going to surpass the limits. You can use custom calculations or payroll process procedures to automatically calculate that. You can get into unique overtime calculations, all different sorts of things. So there's a lot of configurability at the code level. There's configurability at the posting level for how you're actually posting data. And all of that ties into making this a configurable system that can also allow you to leverage your payroll data within the ERP system as a whole. One thing I want to show and give you some illustration of initially is how the payroll module ties into the posting setups of Business Central. This is an easy way to visualize how the payroll module is deeply embedded within the ERP system. And so what I'm showing you here is a screenshot of the withholding and posting setups for the payroll system. So what you're seeing here is you've got employee posting groups, which we'll touch on here in a second. You've got the deduction and withholding codes themselves. Okay, so you've got the type, you've got the payroll code, and then you've got the account number. So all of the payroll codes have to be mapped to account numbers in your chart of accounts, so that when you actually run payroll and you actually post payroll, you're posting accounting entries in detail in real time to your ledger in Business Central. So not only does that give you access to the detail, but it also it all happens instantly when you post, meaning that any reports you run in Business Central after you post payroll are going to be up to date based on that data. There's no with this new Business Central system, there's no having to post to a journal and then post that to the ledger or update the ledger on a nightly basis. There's none of that like you have with some of these older legacy systems. So within the payroll module, we're going to be tying every single payroll code to an account number in your chart of accounts, and there can be additional flexibility within that. In this example, I've got employee posting groups, meaning we've got admin posting groups and we've got field posting groups for this example. But what this means is that you might have the same payroll code, but it's affiliated with a different, an employee might have a different posting group associated with it when you're actually processing payroll. And so that can map the entries to a different account number just using the posting groups. Now you can go a step further and we can configure posting to be automated based on dimensions as well. So if there's different dimensional points that are coming in from either the time entries or that are hard set at the employee level, you can map it that way as well. But this is an example of visually how you can see how the system is integrally tied and embedded within the ERP system. So there's that. Some of the more basic fundamental payroll aspects are going to be managing your employees. You can quickly, you can either import employee data from certain data, whether you've got job boards or things like that. Maybe you want to track applicants in the payroll module and then upload them to employees. You can do that as well. Or you can, if you want to manually load that, you can. We've also got a new feature that we can highlight where your new employees can go through an onboarding agent that's powered by Copilot, and it'll populate some of the fields. But just to give you an idea about what's available on the employee, we call it the employee card. So I've opened up an employee card and, there's name, address, phone number, communication information, admin info, all of which can trigger reporting and calculation actions, depending on what kind of data you want to be tracking. The employee self-service web portal, we can look at direct deposit info, all the kind of, basic stuff that you're going to have on an employee card. But the one thing I want to really touch on is how, when it comes to compensation, when it comes to deductions, when it comes to time off accruals and federal and state withholding, everything in the system is going to be tracked or triggered by effective date. So you can set new comp plans with a new effective date in the future if you want, and it'll automatically, the system will automatically calculate the compensation based on that, where that starting date coincides with that pay cycle in the future. So you can have, not only can you preset compensation so you don't have to manually remember on that day to change it, but you also have a running history of what's transpired in the evolution of the employee's compensation, and you can run reports on that over time. Federal and state withholding, same kind of situation. You can set effective dates to trigger federal or state withholdings. But where this particular feature can also be beneficial is if you ever run into a situation where you have employees that might work in multiple tax jurisdictions in the same pay cycle. You can have multiple state settings on an employee that can trigger, if they work in Illinois one week and Indiana the next week in a biweekly pay cycle, or maybe they split hours, 4 hours here, 4 hours there, and there's different tax requirements. The system can split that out automatically based on the effective date, state tax settings, as well as the time entries that are coming in. Primo Payday is predominantly a payroll module, a nuts and bolts accounting payroll system. There is kind of a gray area when it comes to HR. There are plenty of customers that use their own HR system and import the necessary data into the Primo Payday module to process payroll. But there are, I'd say, affiliated HR capabilities within the system to manage kind of the gray area. So if you have HR specific codes you want to track, you can use the HR employee information table. We also can track certification and qualifications and trigger reporting through that. So if you have just really kind of basic data points you want to track, you can do that through this module. There is also an optional feature that I don't want to spend too much time on this particular run through, but your employees can have the option to utilize an employee web portal whereby the employees will be able to log in. I went to the wrong one. They can log into your company's portal, and they can download pay stubs. They can download pay stubs that are being posted in Business Central. They can submit time off requests. They can submit change requests. All of these are configurable and up to what you want them to be able to do. But that's an optional feature that kind of bridges the gap on the HR side. So that's employees. That's the employee web portal. The next area is going to be hours details before we look at actually processing payroll batches. So the hours detail table is where all of your employees' time entries are going to reside before you actually process a batch and post payroll. And this feature does a couple of things. Because it functions like a staging table, it allows the payroll module to bring in payroll data, time entries from any system that is in existence that can provide data in a CSV or text file, unless it's already built into Business Central. So if you're already posting time to like timesheets in Business Central, you can pull that into this staging table. If you're processing time entries with any other timekeeping system, whether it's maybe you're managing them by hand on an Excel spreadsheet, maybe you've got a timekeeping system, the data can be imported here. Customers have, Primo Payday users have a couple of different options as far as where the system takes it from that point. Some customers have a timekeeping system that's industry specific. Maybe you do government contracting or some sort of labor related business where you already have a timekeeping system that calculates your earnings for the employee based on the hours, based on the position they're clocking in as, the location they're working at, the project they're working on. There might be all different sorts of criteria that are union codes, for example, that might be a part of that. And so in some cases, we have customers that just have the timekeeping system tell the hours detail table, this is the employee, this is how much they get paid for this cycle. But this product is capable of so much more. It has a massive earnings engine behind it that can be configured to meet really unique calculation requirements, including shift differentials, rate differentials, unique overtime calculation requirements, using a variety of configurable tools such as our pay matrix and what have you. So what I'm showing you here is just an example of the hours detail table, and I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to go to one other demo here, one other demo environment, and show you an example of how this can all split out. So this is an hours detail table. Same thing we were looking at earlier, but just different data points. And so in this example, you've got job numbers, department codes, project codes, area codes that are all following the time entries as they come into the hours detail table. So the details or the dimensions, which you can have universal dimensions, you can have payroll specific dimensions, but the details that are coming in with the time entries are going to allow the system to split out and allocate the costs across those dimensions, or using those dimensions as allocating triggers. And it can also use that information to trigger calculations. So if you have union codes, if you have project specific codes that carry specific pay rates, position codes, things like that, then the details that are flowing through with the time entries can be used to trigger the rates and trigger the earnings calculations from within the payroll module itself. So you can have a highly complex payroll calculation requirement. And we've seen some really complex ones. You deal with Canadian school boards where you have multiple unions, multiple positions. Employees can be a part of multiple unions and work shifts and all kinds of things. Same thing with government contracting, all that kind of stuff. Prevailing wages can play into that as well. All of those sorts of unique details, if you can just bring in raw time with the necessary details into this module, and the system can automatically calculate the earnings and split it out and allocate it accordingly. So one way to show you a visual of the allocation is to go to a payroll document. So if I go to payroll processing and I open up Leslie Nope, who's got some hours in the table we were just in, and her hours have been split out based on specific dimensions. This is what her payroll document, and our term for payroll document is just the information that's going to be used to calculate and print a check, right? You can see the gross to net pay down here, and I've highlighted the earnings line. And if I go to payroll expense allocation, what you can see here is in the background, this is the level of detail that is actually going to flow through and hit your ledger in Business Central if you want that. So in this particular example, it's a very simple example, but her hours are split out by different department codes. And so the employee could just see earnings of, whatever the earnings are in this case, several $1,000s. And then behind the lines, you as an accountant would be able to see the detailed allocation splits based on the details that are captured or that are in play. You could also provide that information on a pay stub if you wanted to. We have some customers that have specific union earnings that they want split out by dimension, by union code on a pay stub. Anything that's in the payroll system can be reflected on a pay stub if you want. The team just needs to know about it, and we can make sure that's configured for you as part of a setup. So hopefully that gives you some idea about how the product is embedded in Business Central and how that data can flow to your ledger instantly, but also give you some visual idea about how the information can be harnessed. I can show you like on our time transfer reports here. This gives you just at least a visual of the fact that, You can transfer time from timesheets to payroll. There's always configuration of these reports, but the core structure's there. You can transfer time to the project or jobs journal, transfer and whatnot. So if you want to track project costing or job costing, that's available too. And all of that ties into the hours details and the dimensions that are being tracked. When it comes to actually processing a payroll batch in the software, most of this program is all about setting it up so that everything's automated. So as an actual use case for a user, your main areas are going to be managing employees, where we were just in, importing time into the hours detail table, where you've got a time import that's been configured and you import your hours, and then processing a payroll batch. And so what you're going to do to process a payroll batch is open the batch processing, click new, you select your pay cycle, you would select your pay cycle period, adjust your payment date or posting date, you select your calc formula, which is just the hierarchy of payroll codes to give you gross to net pay. Generally, you might see an example like with regular payroll calc formula. You've got gross earnings, deductions, withholdings, employer taxes, employer contributions, net check. But maybe you have bonus pays where it's just gross pay, or it's gross pay minus a flat % to be withheld, or something like that. So payroll calc formulas are just a way to help you seamlessly, quickly structure a payroll batch based on the specific parameters. So you've got your calc formula, you can filter it, which is a common theme in Business Central, is being able to filter your batches. And then when you're ready to actually generate your batch, post your batch, you can dive into the payroll batch and go through the process. So you can select the payroll documents. If you're doing direct deposit, you export the Nacha file and then you submit that to your bank. If you're doing any checks, you print your checks. You can print or you can email your check stubs. So if you want to just email the check stubs to the employees from the batch process, you can. If you want to kind of automatically skip this step, you can always email what we call, it triggers a blank check stub to be emailed, but then it posts the actual check stub on the portal that we looked at earlier. So, and there's just different ways how you want to set that up based on what your access points are for your employees. And then you post. So, and then you post, and everything posts to the ledger, and you're done. And that's the actual mechanics of posting a batch. And then you get into reporting, right? From a reporting perspective, Primo Payday has a few key areas with standard reports, kind of stock reports that can be configured and tweaked. But we have areas in the batch payroll process. We have areas in the payroll ledger entries that we can jump to. And then we have some basic reports within the normal navigation. But then the core reporting functionality is all built around configuring reports that you can use as a user or that you can configure on your own, where you can configure reports by payroll code or trigger certain fields in the employee card or payroll ledger entries table. And we can talk about that. So on the batch process, you've got some stock reports like being able to compare batches. You can do batch comparison if you have a really stable payroll, PTO accruals, check registers, just some kind of basic reports that are pretty commonly requested by customers. You have some financial reports like your check register, trial balance, GL entry, pre-note pending. You've got some general employee reports. You've got a few HR reports that are based on benefits and garnishment reporting. And then if I go to our payroll ledger entries table here, and notice here how I'm using the navigation bar in Business Central to search for tables within the payroll module, because it's an embedded app that makes that possible. And so now in the payroll ledger entries table, we have additional reports that are available, whether it's 941 recs, state or local income tax, SUTA, FUTA reports, additional states, payroll check registers, things like that. One other thing to note before we dive into the more ad hoc reporting is a feature that we have in the payroll ledger entries table with reversing entries. So when you post payroll and trigger, accounting events in the payroll module, it's going to post those entries to the payroll ledger, and it's going to simultaneously be mapping those and posting them to the GL, to the account numbers that they've been mapped to. So for example, I just highlighted, selected an entry from the payroll ledger entries table. And if I click the navigate button in Business Central, you can see in your BC chart of accounts where those entries are actually hitting. So in this case, these are the actual GL entries that are hitting from those payroll ledger entries. Okay. So that's just another example about how it's integrated. But how that can also play in is helping mitigate errors. So if you do run into a scenario where you post payroll entries and there's a mistake and they need to be cleaned up, you can use the reverse transaction or reverse multiple entries button. Both of these do the same thing, except multiple entries can do a bundle of entries versus just one. And so when you step through this process, it will insert the necessary journal entries, the reversal entries, to unwind those initial entries that were incorrect. But it will also, if there was any hours that were processed and calculated for payroll, it'll push those back out to the hours detail table automatically. If there was time off that was accrued and used in that set of entries that are inaccurate, it'll push those back to the hours detail table as well. So it can really help. If you've ever dealt with ERP software, you run into situations where you do something and then there's 5 other tables. There's 3 other areas you got to run into, and sometimes you forget, or you got to clean something up, or you try to do an action and it errors out. So the reverse transactions button is kind of a user-friendly thing we added to at least help, from a payroll perspective, help automate some of the cleanup when you make errors. So I digress. We talked about some of the base reporting that also includes 941s, 940s, W-2s, W-3s. So you can export the W-2 in the electronic file. You can file W-2s on your own. You can let an outside service do it if you don't want to do it yourself, but it's all there for you. Same thing for ACA compliance. You've got all the ACA reporting data to be tracked in the system. You can export the 1094, 1095C in the electronic file format. You can run your buffer tables. You can run your look back periods. And you can use this data to either file 1095s on your own. You can use an outside service. That just depends on what your appetite is for paying other people to do, or other entities to do certain functions. But another kind of core component of this product is the configurable reporting. So it's ad hoc reporting at the end of the day. You've already got every table in the system can be exported. That's not true. There's probably a couple somewhere that are not exportable yet in Excel. But all the payroll ledger entries table, employee cards, all of the tables that you would probably need it for. And if you find one that doesn't export, you just let us know and we can add it. But you can export all the most of the tables in Excel. Which applies to that really core Business Central function, where if you want to export a table in Excel, make changes, then load those changes automatically to the table you're just in, you can do that. So all of that's there. The ability to use these data points for, Power BI reports or whatever data reporting you might be using, you can. But we also have ad hoc reporting. So all this really allows you to do, without getting too down the rabbit hole here, is you can you as a user can take any payroll code in the system and combine it and filter it however you want and sort it into a report format that works for you, and save that report to use over and over again. And so what that allows for you what that means for you as a user is that you can have a lot of control over the types of data, payroll data that you want to report on. You have a lot of control over how that report looks. And if you want a payroll team member to build a report for you, it's going to be a lot cheaper because we're not having to go into some SQL backend and do it. So the reporting is cheaper if you want someone to do it for you, and it gives you a ton more control over what you see and how you see it. And so in this example, for like an EFTPS report, which is a part of every project, but it at least gives you an idea, you can see how you can source it by ledger entries or open documents. So like if you want to generate an open document report to like evaluate a batch by payroll code, very simple, use open documents and run a report. But in this case, if you want to do an EFTPS report, which is a common report for individuals who are remitting taxes to the IRS, you need to know several things. You need to know, what is my Social Security withholding for both the employee and employer side? What is my Medicare withholding on both the employee and employer side into one number? And what is my federal income tax for that cycle? So you can create this report. And in this instance, each group is like a column in the Excel sheet, and each group is actually broken out by specific payroll codes in the system itself. So you can activate both sides of Social Security and group them into one specific code, so that when you're actually ready to run this report, and I didn't filter by date range, but for the purposes of our demo here, it'll be fine. And Center Technologies team, can y'all see the Excel sheet? Or is this not visible?
Nope, we can still see it with.
Okay, perfect.
We got
So for demo purposes, what you can see here is that both sides of Social Security are in one number for EFTPS. The entire total number for that cycle for Medicare is in one little nice column, and the federal withholding for that cycle is in one column. And that's a simplistic example, but hopefully it gives you the idea about the sort of reporting, ad hoc reporting that's there. And then the other example would be the field selection reports. So if you have any report you want to create that pulls data from any field in the employee card or the payroll ledger entries table, you can do that as well. And same kind of rules apply, where you as a user have access to it, but then also if you want us to do it, it's a lot cheaper. So one other thing I wanted to mention while we're doing this demo is kind of a surprise, and it's the employee onboarding feature that we've launched this week. So let me make sure I've got the right demo here. So the employee onboarding feature is a new tool that's powered by Copilot. And so what it allows users to do is you can have your employees use the onboarding agent to be prompted to fill out really any data point you want. But it can also prompt, in this particular example, everything that's needed for the W-4. And because it's using, Chat GPT as a back end, and it's got this massive language model, what it means is that at least from like a chatbot perspective, it can kind of read between the lines on what employees are soon to be employees are typing, and parse the data to give you accurate information. Now, rather than bore y'all with going through each individual line, I went ahead and filled out most of this before I submit it. But in this particular example, I'm saying my name is Brendan Frazier. It kind of confirms what my name is, first name, last name. I'm putting my email address here with primo.com, as I want to show you kind of the actions that are triggered. It prompts you through what's the date you're starting. Now, it asks in this particular format, day, year with the slashes. I didn't do that. I just said 01/01/2026, and it's able to parse through and read that as correct. And so it kind of does this down the line, and then it asks us to submit. Now, I'll be honest, I set this up a few minutes ago, so if it shut me out, then we're going to be up against it. But I think it's submit. So it's structured all the information. It's gathered everything: name, address, phone number, all the information that's needed for the W-2, excuse me, the W-4. Sorry, guys, I wanted to get this all stationed, but I just hope it didn't error me out because I was waiting too long. Okay. So then it submits. So we've now submitted the W-4 data. And so what'll happen is that in the environment with which, make sure it, perfect. So then within the Business Central environment, see here, where is there? So then it will, what is he? Okay, 1042. Show you on here. So that means is that Brendan Fraser will then load into the software automatically with all the details that were triggered by the agent, and then it will and then it will trigger the W-4 to be emailed to whichever email you want it to be emailed to. So that's a new feature that we've released that also helps kind of augment some of the gray area HR functions that the system has. And I think center team, unless there's other questions, I think I'm good.
With this, Steve, jumping back in. Thanks for that, and I really enjoyed that last part there with seeing some AI coming in. I mean, we know that's where the world's going, and it's going to be a great time saver there. I do have a couple of questions that have come up with prospects in the past. One in particular, just your opinion on should companies wait until the end of the year to switch payroll systems? Or is there another scenario where maybe they don't have to wait to the end of the year? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, from a cost perspective, you can save a few hours if you start fresh on a new year. I mean, it's certainly, I guess, good if you can. But the reality about that is that everybody thinks they want to do that, and then they wait till October or November to pull the trigger, and then that doesn't happen. There's only so much bandwidth that every ERP, I think all ERP partners kind of deal with that in some capacity. There's a mad dash to go like January 1. But the other thing is, at least from a payroll implementation perspective, our team, that's not an issue. We are used to converting customers mid-year, mid-quarter, with at the very minimum year-to-date accounting entries, ledger entries, so that they can have accurate tax reporting. That's probably one component of this, though, is the team. The payroll's really solid, 250 customers in the US and Canada that use it of varying sizes from 5 to 20,000 employees. But our implementation team, which is actually relatively small, we don't have like 50 people. We've got a few people that we trust to do implementations that all of them have over 20 years of experience as accountants using Microsoft Nav, which is the older version of Business Central, and the Business Central prior to learning how to implement the payroll system. So having a payroll, having an accounting expertise that can kind of forensically go through the entries and the historical accounting, and also understanding what the use case is for an end user is really critical. But that's a main factor of why it doesn't matter if we go live mid-year, because no matter what, we're going to find, generally speaking, just errors and things that need to be cleaned up, state unemployment tax that wasn't being calculated correctly or whatever. And so that team is able to do that properly, stage the data properly, make sure that you're coordinating your You might have a legacy payroll system that requires a bunch more payroll codes than you need in this product. You might be able to do a lot more with less payroll codes. And so translating all of that into a more concise payroll code list while giving you accurate data migration is key. But that's a rant. The point is that the accounting expertise mitigates or negates the need to go live at the beginning of a year, but that's up to the customer.
Good to know. I know we have just a few minutes left, but one other common question. What could customers do to prepare for the data migration? I know there can be a lot of work getting ready, but what does your team do, or what can you recommend on how customers can get ready for, how they can help make the implementation go better to get ready for that?
Honestly, the best thing a customer can do would be to embrace change. I mean, yeah, you can give us data, but between the Center Technologies team and the Primo Payday team, we're going to do everything we can to take as much like mind-numbing analysis off the plate of the customer. Just because it's faster for us to just parse through and figure out, okay, let's at least get to this point before we, start engaging the customer with testing and things like that. But the biggest roadblock, I think, that happens across the ERP landscape is you're changing to a new system, and in some cases, the executive team has decided to make that change, and the employees don't want to do it, which I totally get because I hate changing software too. And so then there's this kind of friction, for the initial phases of the process of not embracing that maybe data is going to look a little different, or the process is going to be a little different. Particularly when you're moving to Business Central, just because it's so new and there's so many cool new things, but it takes a little time to adjust to it. It takes time to get used to the screens. It takes time to get used to where you go, where you navigate to find something. So if customers are really on board with embracing change and embracing the fact that they're getting a new payroll system, and they get their mindset where they're kind of excited about learning something new, then implementations and conversions are awesome. You can evaluate your processes. You can assess what things did you do that you don't need to do anymore? How can we make things better? Where you run into problems in general is if customers and end users don't want to switch, and then you're having to kind of begrudgingly bring them along, and that just, if they have an open mind, it's going to be awesome, and if they don't, then it's not.
That same experience. Yeah, it just always helps to go into it knowing it's for the best. So, well, this is great information. Really appreciate the presentation here. I'm going to bring back up our slide here just and hand it back to Eric to just kind of wrap up just on how to get a hold of us information. Eric, if you want to just talk about that for a minute, and then we'll wrap it up.
Excellent. Thanks again, Whit. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate everybody that's able to join today's webinar. If you would like to learn more just in general about Center Technologies, the different services that we have to offer, you could reach out to me directly. And if you'd like to learn more about Primo Payday, we do have Whit Lester's information in here as well. If I'm not available, you can also reach out to my colleague, Samantha Delaire. Her contact information is available here as well. Feel free to give us a call, send us an email. We'd love to talk to you to learn more about Center Technologies and the different partners that we work with for your IT solutions. Thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate everybody's time.